Well, it's that time of year. It is back to school. And for many of you, it is also back to college. You're moving your kids in, maybe your oldest, maybe your baby, to college for the first time, and you are feeling all the feels. My friend, I have been there. I've done it 3 times. And as I'm watching my social media feed fill up with parents taking their kids back to college and go through some of the same struggles and challenges that I did, I want to share with you what I learned from dropping 3 girls off at college at very different places. I've got 3 pieces of advice for you today to help navigate this new chapter of your life, because I promise you, it is pretty cool. So if you are a parent of someone who is headed to college this year for the first time, or maybe it's your baby that you're sending for the last time, I got you. If that sounds like something that interests you, just stay tuned. Okay, so it is back to school time, and my social media feed is filling up with people taking their kids back to school, whether it's virtual, whether it's in person, whether it's a combination of all that, and that includes going back to college. Now, I've had 3 daughters, and I've kind of gone through the gamut of every kind of post-high school experience. You know, one who went to school just down the road, about 30 minutes from here, Butler University, but then is now in grad school. So I've done the grad and the undergrad. I had my middle, who did not go to college right away, who was a ballerina and then took online classes and then was in school in New York City. My youngest, who was in school in New York City, and then they both came home because of the pandemic, and now we're transferring into so like almost every college experience, it feels like I have some sort of touch point with. And there are some pieces that I've learned through this experience, how to make it better for everyone involved, because it truly is the coolest part of their life. It's so cool. It's not the highlight of their life. We hope that these 4 years are not the best part of their life, but it is a cool part of their life and of yours. And you don't want to make it sad, and you don't want to make it depressing, and you don't want them sad for you. And so I want to share some of the stuff that I've learned as I've navigated this season in my life 3 times in lots of different ways. So you might know, if you've seen some of my other videos, that I was what I consider a surprise bonus child. My mom and dad sometimes just said surprise, but I said bonus. And that means my parents were older when they had me. So I was the first one to go to college in that sort of conventional, traditional way. Went to 4-year school, lived on campus, did the sorority, president of my sorority, like that whole shebang. But what I knew about my mom, and still to this day know about her, is that she is a crier over everything. Like things that we shouldn't be crying about, like she cries. So of course, on that first day when they dropped me off and I'm moving in, I mean, girl is sobbing. Now this was not a surprise to me because she cries all the time, but like sobbing. And it started to make me think, like, are you sad that I'm going to college? Like, this doesn't make any sense. I experienced that too when I got married. Like, she cried the entire time at every wedding planning meeting, whatever. I'm like, do you not like JV? Like, what's happening here? And when I got to that point in my life where going through high school graduation, going through college graduation, but moving them into college, if I found myself getting sort of emotional or teary-eyed, I would take a minute and I'd think, okay, let's get to the root of the sadness. So that's my first point to you. Get to the root of the sadness. When I watched my mom cry, I don't even know why she was crying. And I don't know if she knew why she was crying. It's kind of a, it just is who she is. I mean, there definitely were times it was a little awkward and embarrassing, but it's just a human emotion. And I don't know if she knew why she would cry so much at these big events, because when you think about it, why are you crying? What is the root of this sadness that you're feeling? And it finally got clear for me at Jesse's high school graduation. So you see, I've been through this a lot, and it took me a little while to figure out what the root of the sadness is. And I want to shorten that learning curve for you, because here's what I think it is. I was never sad that my children were going on to college. This is the next step in their life. This is what we've raised them to do. Whether it was college or whatever their next step was, for all 3 of them, it's been college of some form. But whatever that next step was, they were ready for it. They were that's what we raised them to do. But why was I sad? Because it's hard to wrap your head around how quickly time passes. And when I finally got to Jessie's high school graduation, and she said to me, Mom, are you gonna cry? Just because she knows her grandma cries at everything, like all the time, at everything. So there's no context for why my mom cries. There's no well, it's a wedding, so I should cry. Or I'm just saying goodbye to you from a trip for lunch and I'm crying. There's no context. There's no relativity here. So, when Jessie was like, Mom, are you gonna cry? She had that knowledge of her grandma in the back of her mind. And I know she was thinking, God, please don't embarrass me and cry. And I said, I might. And I think I finally figured out why. So if you are a parent dropping your kid off at college, taking your kid to college, or maybe they're transitioning into high school, but this is really specifically to the parents who are taking their kids to college, and you find yourself teary-eyed, here's what I think it is. It is so hard for us to believe how fast time has passed. And as a kid, Jessie at 18, when she asked me that question, and it finally was clear to me why we get emotional at events like this, they can't wrap their heads around that. They're too young, that's the way it should be. But for us parents, when you're moving your kid into college, you're literally thinking, I just took you to kindergarten yesterday. That's how fast time passes. And I think that's what makes us sad, or I hope it does, because Lord knows, none of us should be wanting our kids to live in our basements from now until they are adults. Because remember, you and I, the reason why we have children to find this joy and fulfillment in is because we left home and made a life and had children. There they are. So now it's their turn to leave home and make a life and have children. That's how all this works. But we do get sad at these big monumental events. And I finally realized it's just because we're so flabbergasted really at how quickly time passes. And I feel like I've always had a little bit of a better grasp of that, and maybe it's because I had older parents than some of my friends who were younger than me. Their parents were younger than me, and when I would teach class at the Y, and I would have a class full of moms with littles, and they'd be like, "Oh my God, I couldn't wait to get here to get away from my kid," and I'd go, "Don't." It goes so fast. It goes so fast. And I think that's where the tears come from. For most people, the root of the sadness. Number one, get to the root of your sadness. When my mom cried, she just cried because I don't think she could even articulate her emotions. Back in the day, nobody talked about emotions. But I think the root of her sadness was how fast time is flying. And that's how I feel all the time. That's why I get sad, is because I cannot believe we're at college move-in and not kindergarten move-in. Number two piece of advice. So imagine me, there I am at college in the big auditorium, and they're doing the parents just questionnaire, Q&A, and it comes time for the parents to leave. And there's my mom sobbing and sobbing. Okay, A, I'm a little embarrassed. B, it's a little awkward. But C, literally, I was thinking, do you not want me to go to college? Why am I sad? And then D, I start being sad because I'm leaving. Okay, no. None of this is stuff that we want happening. We're better than that, and we're smarter than that. We've raised our kids better than that. And point number two is, when we are sad, and we communicate that to our children, it makes them sad too. It makes them feel guilty for leaving home. They don't know anything else. They feel guilty for leaving home. I felt bad that I had left and was in college, even though that's what I was supposed to be doing. That's what your kid's supposed to be doing. If you're taking them to college, that's a choice that you and your family have made. That's part of their journey. And now you're going to make them feel guilty or sad because you're sad because time has passed so quickly. Parents, we have to stop that. I mean, I felt bad and guilty for a while because my mom, not my dad, my dad was like, go rule the world. But my mom really made me feel, with her tears and her sadness, made me feel bad and guilty for leaving home, even though that's what I was supposed to be doing. And so I think our sadness can transmit to our kids. Thank you, son, for going under. Our sadness can transmit to our kids, and then they feel sad. And that's the opposite of what they should feel at this really cool part of their lives, this cool next chapter of their lives. And I'm going to tell you some things just straight up. And I talked about this a lot last fall when I dropped Jessie off, my youngest, when I took her to New York. Because remember, I've taken Jenna to Butler, so just down the road where JV works as the football coach. I've taken Josie to Orlando Ballet. She took classes online. She then came home. She had 4 hip surgeries and then enrolled at Pace University in New York City, and then took Jessie to New York City to Marymount College. Now those two have come home. Like, I've done all the move-ins on my own too, because move-ins in the fall. Well, what happens in the fall? Football. So I do all the move-ins on my own. And when last year when I talked about Jessie being gone and being an empty nester for the first time, all I could think about was, I feel like how they must feel. Because when you go to college, yeah, it's a little nerve-wracking and there's a lot of options to explore, but that's the point. There's so many options to explore. You feel like this chapter is just unfolding in front of you, and you have all this opportunity, and it's this really cool, like, wilderness of options and opportunities and stuff to explore and do and curiosities to follow and time to do it. All of a sudden, there was time to do some of that stuff because I wasn't doing school carpool or making lunches or just any of that. You know what I'm talking about. And if I was sad that they were gone and made them sad, then I'd also have to be sad about this next chapter of my own life. And if that's the case, I don't think we've done our parenting right. Because if you've done your parenting and your life right, I think when you get to that point that they're all gone to college, yes, you're sad because time has passed so quickly, but you're not sad that they're doing the thing that they want to do, and you're not sad at the opportunity to explore your passions and curiosities, because that's what you have time to do now. So, number one, you got to get to the root of your sadness. What is it that's making you sad? And number two, you have to realize that if you are so sad in front of your kid all the time, you're transmitting that sadness to them. That's the opposite of what we want to do. We want them to be as excited and fired up about this next stage of their life as we are about ours. And if you're not excited and fired up about this next stage of your life, you got to work on you. That has nothing to do with your kid. You got to work on you to get excited and fired up about this next stage of your life. And then number 3, this is just the factual, objective piece of it, is if you and your family have decided that college is the next step for your child and that's the path that you're on, then that's the next step in the journey that you've raised them to do, right? Like, you raised them to do this. Okay, so now they're doing the thing. And again, let's go back. I mean, my gosh, we're experiencing it in the pandemic, aren't we? With college kids coming home, grown kids coming home, kids who had jobs, full-time jobs, coming home and living with their parents. And all of a sudden, like, it is, I'm not going to lie, it's been the coolest ever to have the girls back home for a while, to have Jenna come home for a little while. That has been the coolest ever. I will never get this time back. Time with my grown children, to have grown conversations, elevated conversations about life and leadership and goals and passions and dreams and vision. I will never get this time back, ever. I've loved every single minute of it. But this isn't what I raised them to do, to live at home and just take a walk with me and the dogs in the morning and do some online school. I didn't raise them to do this. I raised them to go out and freaking change the world. Well, you can't do that living at home. So this is the next step of their journey. When they go off to college, this is what you raised them to do, to go off and do the next step. You know, it's funny, I often say that it's interesting to me because I didn't grow up seeing any kind of female entrepreneur. I didn't really grow up seeing anyone go to college or be a female entrepreneur or do anything like that. So it's like, from what I saw, I think of it in terms of circuits. Like 2 of the 4 of my circuits, or 2 of the 4 of the circuits that there are in terms of, I don't even know what, you know, dreams and ambitions and goals. Like maybe, well, my mom probably had 1 or 2. one of them. And my dad probably had 2.5, 3, whatever. I feel like I've got like 2 or 3 circuits connected, and that my goal for my girls to have like 3 or 4 circuits like everyone should be. I mean, that's kind of a ramble. I don't know if that makes any sense, but it's like every generation should be pushing progress forward that much more. My mom did not go to college. My dad did. My dad was in the Navy and then he went to college. My mom did not go to college. I went to college. My girl's going to college. Jenna's now going to grad school. I don't know if the other 2 will go to grad school, but it's like that's the next step. Like they were raised to that this was going to be the next step in their journey. So for me to be sad about that would go back to like how my mom was back in the day, which would mean there have been no forward motion, no personal growth, no forward motion. I know it's like a lot in my head that I'm trying to get out. But what I want you to understand is, number one, you've got to get to the root of your sadness and why you feel bad and sad and all the things about your child moving out and going to college. It's not wrong. Your feelings are not wrong, but your feelings aren't facts, but they're not wrong. And if you can get to the root of why you feel sad and put some names around that, I think you'll feel better about it. So I was able to say, it just makes me sad at how time passes so quickly. And Jessie went, oh, yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, you're right. It does. And then we were able to be on the same wavelength. And so then if I was a little bit sad at high school, I was just like, oh, it's because mom's thinking like, just yesterday I was in kindergarten. She's not sad that I'm graduating from high school and then moving on with my life. She's sad at how fast time passes. Oh yeah, that makes sense. So if you can get to the root of why you feel sad and articulate it and verbalize it, it helps everybody. It helps everybody. Because otherwise you're going to just transmit your sadness to your kiddo, who then takes that on. Because if you have a close relationship with them, and that's why you're sad too, they take that on and then they feel sad and bad and guilty about leaving. And then that's nowhere that we want to be. And then you also have to realize that as much as they have all this opportunity and option in front of them, so do you. So as they've gone into college, especially if it's your baby, and now you're an empty nester, especially if it is, all of a sudden, as much as they're looking at this really cool, I think of it almost like a red carpet, like sort of like in Wizard of Oz or something, or like a field. And they're looking at this wilderness of amazingness in front of them and all these options and paths and possibilities to explore. And we have that too now. Like that's our next chapter too. And that's really awesome and nothing to be sad about. You can be sad that time has passed so quickly, but you can't be sad that you've got a life to live and a second chapter of a life to live, because they're doing that too. And third, remember, that's why we raise them. We've raised them to go out and be exceptional human beings who hopefully change the world in some way and bring positive energy and build their own legacy. And just like we left our home and maybe got married, had a partner, or whatever, had children, that's what they're doing. They're doing what you did. So you can't be sad about it for very long because they're doing what you did. But you can understand why you might be sad, put some words around it, flip the story in your mind, and just get so fired up for everything they're about to experience and learn. And my gosh, they'll come home at Thanksgiving or Christmas and you'll have these so cool conversations with them. You'll be like, I get to talk with you like a grown-up, and it's the coolest ever, and it would never happen if they were living in your basement. It just wouldn't. So I hope that helps you to some extent. I know that the time of transition can be challenging, but I'm telling you, it's what they were meant to do. It's what you were meant to do, and you've got passions and you've got possibilities just like they do, and it's going to be awesome. It's going to be awesome. So cheers to you. Cheers to your kiddo. And I hope you have an amazing back to school.